Good afternoon. I'm Andrew Crocker with Be Civil, Be Heard, one of the nonpartisan community organizations united with the shared goal of educating voters and engaging the candidates prior to the upcoming primary election. For the August 2nd primary, the coalition is hosting a series of candidate interviews for the 7th Congressional District, as well as local Senate and state House races. Other community nonpartisan members include Drury University's L.E. Metter Center for Politics and Citizenship, Junior League of Springfield, Leadership Springfield, NAACP Springfield, Ozarks Public Broadcasting KSMU Radio, Springfield News Leader, Missouri State University, the Springfield Greene County Library District, and Ozarks Technical Community College's Political Science Department. Today, we're interviewing candidates for the Missouri Senate District 30, Missouri State Senator Lincoln Hough and former Springfield City Councilwoman Angela Romine. Candidates will be interviewed individually and asked the same questions. They will have 1 minute to introduce themselves and 2 minutes to respond to each question. Questions were submitted by coalition partner organizations and were not provided to the candidates in advance. The order of the candidate interviews was determined by a random drawing. Stand by. Our first interview is with Angela Romine, who joins me by Zoom. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's begin by having you introduce yourself and tell us why you decided to run for office. You have 1 minute.
Perfect. My name is Angela Romine, and I decided to run for office because I did not like the direction that we're going in as far as the state is concerned. There's never a voice for actual citizens. It's usually for the government to protect the government. And so I was asked by several people to consider running for this race. And so here I am. I've jumped both feet in.
So let's start off with 5 questions, once again, approved by our community members. First question, ma'am. In 2020, Missouri voters elected to expand Medicaid. If the legislature sought to alter Medicaid expansion through a referendum, something it has done when dealing with voter adopted measures in the past, what would your position be? 2 minutes.
And I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Yes, ma'am. If the legislature sought to alter Medicaid expansion through a referendum, something it's done with voter adopted measures before, what would your position be?
Well, I'd have to look at the constitutionality of it. You know, I truly believe that the voters have a right to speak and say their values. I did not agree with the expansion. I voted no against it. But that's part of the reason that we have elections and the reason we have people representing us. And if we're not getting the message out correctly, then that's something to look into. But yeah, I personally was not in favor of the expansion, but I also don't want to circumvent the Constitution of Missouri. So I'd have to look into that and see what the Constitution says before I give an answer to that.
Would you be willing, as a follow-up, would you be willing to support an effort to issue a referendum to Missouri voters to vote on the issue again?
Yes, I would do that for sure. I mean, the gas tax was put on the bill 3 times. So, and 3 times the people said no, so.
Second question, this year, ma'am, some Missouri lawmakers tried to legislate how public schools teach certain aspects of American history, including the impacts of slavery and racism. In your view, what is the role of the legislature as it relates to public school curriculum?
Well, this is a touchy subject for me because I am a minority and most of my family is from Mexico. But I think that right now, how we're learning history, it's not the full picture because we do have 2 different curriculum, right? That are trying to circle around. For example, the opposite of what is being taught currently is a 1776 project. And so you either need the whole picture or part of the picture, but when you do part of the picture of the history, you're not giving the full history of anything. You're skewing what actual history is. You know, I learned different history than what's being taught now, and I'm sure grandparents and great-grandparents were taught differently also. So history is not subjective. It is what it is. And so I believe that we should learn all the history, good, the bad, and the ugly, to learn from it, not to hide from it or change it. And so there's more history in the United States besides slavery, this not good policies that we had in the past, but we need to talk about all of it, not just one specific thing. And so I believe the legislation should have a say in what is being taught as far as a whole picture and not just one-sided indoctrination kind of thing.
Your third question, ma'am, there have been recent efforts to change the initiative petition process in Missouri. What are your views on possible changes to the initiative petition process, like raising the bar for citizens to be able to get an issue on the statewide ballot?
What do you mean by raising the bar?
Raising the bar, perhaps, such as the threshold needed, the number of people needed to sign a petition in order to get it, or requiring more districts to secure petitions from, rather than just 6 out of the 8, and so on.
Gotcha. Well, I do believe that citizens need to have a pathway to challenge what the legislation is doing or not doing, and so I need to look at what the threshold is now. But if it's reasonable, I mean, I had to get signatures to run for city council, and it was just 100 signatures, but for a school board, they need 500. So I would assume that the same thing would be going to put something on the ballot as far as petition is concerned. So as long as it's reasonable, I think that would be, that's where I stand on that.
Ma'am, fourth question. Stand by. Fourth question. Missouri voters legalized medical marijuana in 2018. Efforts are underway to put recreational marijuana on the ballot this year. Under what circumstances would you support legalization, if at all?
Non-recreational use, I do believe in the medical part of it, because I believe, the doctors do know what they're doing as far as medications are concerned when they're not being overseen with a lot of government overreach. So I do believe in the medical part of the marijuana use, but not as a legal recreational, no.
Ma'am, final question. Given recent increases in the cost of prescription medication, would you support the creation of a state-based drug assistance program? Why or why not?
I think that we need to look at prescription other ways. I do believe in the free market, but I also believe that right now some of the medications are monopolized, and so that's what's keeping the cost high. Some of the same medications are lower in other countries by the same pharmaceutical companies, but I do not believe that the government should step in. I think that we just need to try to tackle the problem a different way so that it's fair for everybody and not just certain people.
Former Springfield City Councilwoman Angela Ramin, that concludes our interview. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you so much.
Again, I've been speaking with former Springfield City Councilwoman Angela Ramin, who is a candidate for Missouri State Senate Race 30, District 30. Our next candidate is State Senator Lincoln Hough, who joins me by Zoom. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Andrew.
Could you please introduce yourself and tell us why you decided to run for this position? You have 1 minute.
Sure. So my name is Lincoln Hough. I live in Springfield. I'm about an 8th generation Greene County resident and a 1st generation farmer. I built a cattle operation that is outside of town that is what, honestly kind of defines me and a lot of the issues that I take. But Why did I decide to run for this office? Well, quite frankly, Andrew, this is a re-election campaign for me. I served 3 terms in the Missouri House. I served a couple of terms on the Greene County Commission for 2 years. And then I've just completed my first term in the Missouri Senate, currently serve as the Appropriations Vice Chairman, in line to write what is about a $47 billion budget moving forward.
Thank you, sir. And as I said a moment ago, we'll have several questions for you, starting with this one.
Sure.
In 2020, Missouri voters elected to expand Medicaid. If the legislature sought to alter Medicaid expansion through a referendum, something it's done when dealing with voter-adopted measures in the past, what would your position be? You have 2 minutes.
Well, sure. And my position on Medicaid expansion after it was on the ballot and the majority of Missouri voters approved it was to go ahead and fund it. Because honestly, Andrew, what we're really talking about here is reimbursing the providers that do provide the care for that population. You know, you're talking about folks that for probably a long time have gone without healthcare or utilized services that are, quite frankly, more expensive for us to reimburse, i.e. the emergency room. And so my position has always been, after the voters approved that on the ballot, that we should reimburse and provide that care for our citizens here in Missouri.
Second question, sir. This year, some Missouri lawmakers tried to legislate how public schools teach certain aspects of American history, including the impacts of slavery and racism. In your view, what's the role of the legislature as it relates to public school curriculum?
Yeah, so I have a long and storied history in local control. We have duly elected local school boards that, in my opinion, should manage those local districts. I don't believe that the legislature needs to be deciding what each individual school district is teaching our kids. I think that's why. I mean, I've got one boy right now that goes to field that just finished up 2nd grade. I've got another one that'll start the year after next. Sam just turned 4, and I trust my community when they elect the folks that make those decisions that are on our school board. And my opinion has always been, if you don't like what's happening in your local community, then you change who's making those decisions. If you don't like what city council's doing, you change who's on city council, and it's the same with your school board. So I've always been, Andrew, I've always been a proponent of local control and letting those decisions be made locally.
There have been recent efforts, sir, to change the initiative petition process in Missouri. What are your views on possible changes to the initiative petition process, like raising the bar for citizens to be able to get an issue on the statewide ballot?
Yeah, so the initiative petition process is something that I think a lot of times is a last resort when the legislature doesn't take action. And what you actually saw was Medicaid expansion ended up on the ballot after an initiative petition process because enough people in this state decided we're tired of the inaction in Jefferson City, and we want to take this thing directly to the voters. My opinion is, you know, there are probably some tweaks that can be made. I don't think we want to turn into California, where I've got some relatives. I've got an aunt and uncle out there that live outside Sacramento, and they routinely tell me that before elections, they're sent a booklet in the mail because there are so many different propositions on the ballot getting ready, you know, for their decisions. But in my opinion, that still needs to be an avenue that our citizens across the state can utilize if they see fit. And it's not an easy process. I mean, it takes hundreds of thousands of individuals that sign up that say we want to have this decision on the next ballot. So, you know, my opinion really is I don't see right now a big issue with our initiative petition process. There's probably some tweaks. I know people want to raise the number of signatures or raise, you know, the bar on congressional districts and make so many, you know, signatures per district. My opinion is right now it's a fairly tough process to go through, and we're probably in a pretty decent spot.
Next question, sir. Missouri voters legalized medical marijuana in 2018, and efforts are underway to put recreational marijuana on the ballot this year. Under what circumstances would you support legalization, if at all?
You know, I'm not a proponent of the legalization of marijuana. You know, I think folks need to make their own decision about that. We've got the medical avenue right now. You know, my guess is probably if you pulled that thing, Andrew, it would pass if the signatures get it on the ballot. But I'm not necessarily a supporter. And I think, you know, right now having that avenue for certain specific, I've got some friends who've, you know, had parents or siblings go through cancer treatments and things like that. And if they've got an alternative to utilize, they've done that. I'm not a proponent of expanding that, though.
Sir, final question. Given recent increases in the cost of prescription medication, would you support the creation of a state-based drug assistance program? Why or why not?
So give me a little clarification on that. You're just saying, given the expense of certain medications, would I support a state-sponsored
program to make the costs more manageable for Missourians?
Sure. So we already do that through some programs that are directed towards our seniors and folks on fixed incomes like that. You know, I was actually part of the effort that moved to sunset. We had a program that was getting ready to expire actually this summer, and a few folks and myself worked together to make sure that program continued. I would say right now, any opportunity that we have at the state level to give folks more access to those prescription drugs, especially the ones that are, quite frankly, so expensive, is something that I would support.
State Senator Lincoln Hough, that concludes our interview, sir. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Sure, appreciate it, Andrew.
I've been speaking with State Senator Lincoln Hough, who is a candidate for the Missouri State Senate, District 30. This concludes our interviews for Missouri State Senate, District 30. The primary election is Tuesday, August 2nd. We hope you continue to research the candidates and exercise your right and privilege to vote. If you have any questions about where or how to vote or the status of your voter registration, please call the Greene County Clerk's Office at 417-868-4055. This program was pre-recorded and will be posted on coalition websites and social media platforms after today's broadcast. No part of the audio or video may be reproduced or transmitted in any form by any means, electronic or mechanical, without the written permission of the copyright holder. Be Civil, Be Heard. I'm Andrew Crocker, the director of Be Civil, Be Heard. Thank you for joining us.